I recently read this hypothesis as to why people cry in front of Mark Rothko's paintings. It said that they believed there was a posthumous push to add an almost kitschy emotional element to his work. My first reaction, stop being so damn cynical. My second reaction is that if you truly believe that, you must think there's some nefarious group that after Rothko passed was trying to manipulate his market. Everything, even crying in front of a Mark Rothko painting, has to be a conspiracy theory, right? But this had me thinking, when are the times I've had a real emotional connection to a piece of art? And on top of that, were there any of those emotional connections that actually physically brought me to tears? I came up with 3 times this has actually happened to me. A genuine tearing up in public, which is something I never do. My mom actually nicknamed me the Emotionless Wonder because I would just stand there and stare into space as she scolded me. But that's a story for another day. So I'll tell you about those 3 experiences in just a minute. But for now, I think it makes sense to spend just a little more time with that Rothko example. Rothko was an artist who was successful during his lifetime. In fact, he showed his work at some of the most influential galleries and exhibited in the most important museums. It's not like he was unknown or underappreciated. He even had 2 of the most important art collectors in America commission him to create a non-denominational chapel in Houston, Texas. So he didn't need these stories about how the viewer was overcome by emotion just by being in the presence of his paintings. I've seen dozens, if not hundreds of Rothkos over the years, from small works on paper to giant 15-foot paintings, and none of them have made me cry. I have, however, sat on one of those benches every museum inserts into every gallery space and witnessed people, from all walks of life, have genuine emotional reaction to both Rothko's paintings and other works in the museum. What is it about the colors of a Joan Mitchell painting that can, at times, touch our emotional core? Or the monumentality of a Richard Serra sculpture? How does this giant piece of steel remind us of our tiny place in the universe while simultaneously inspiring us with the feeling that almost anything is possible? I don't know how art does that, but I know that's why I like art. And the first time this happened to me was in front of a still life. This is really before I knew anything about art or the art market. I appreciated art, but thought of it more as a checklist. I needed to see this piece at the Louvre, or that painting at the Metropolitan Museum. It was like art was just one component of a broader bucket list of things to accomplish before I die. It could go right between visiting the Grand Canyon and attending a Formula One race in Monaco. But for some reason on this day, it was a bowl of fruit that stopped me in my tracks. Now, if you're watching this channel, you're at least somewhat likely to be familiar with the Post-Impressionists. These are some of the first artists we learn about. Vincent van Gogh, Paul Gauguin, Henri Rousseau, Georges Seurat, and of course, Paul Cezanne. I was standing in front of this painting, and the only feeling I could compare it to is the time in my early teens when my sister gave me REM's Document on CD. REM made me realize there was so much more to music, and Cezanne made me realize there was so much more to art. It was the first time I realized art wasn't just about depicting the world as it was. Cezanne was ignoring many of the principles of perspective. He wasn't interested in showing the world exactly like we saw it, nor was he trying to paint the atmosphere like many of the Impressionists that came before him. To me, anyway, he was painting things the way we remembered them, almost as if in a dream, but not in a surreal, melting clocks dream kind of way. This was the type of dream, and I can't be the only one who's experienced this, but the type where you can never finish a simple task or reach a certain destination. The challenge at hand may seem so simple, but something in that dream is just slightly off and prevents us from accomplishing our mission. Apples can never actually sit on that table. They would immediately tumble to the ground. In fact, that table could never exist at all. The elements just don't add up. As you look at it, It doesn't even make sense as an object. And for some reason, this resonated with a 20-something-year-old me. I felt no longer was the artist trying to impress some rich patron, nor were they seeking admiration from a broader public, enamored with their skill and craftsmanship. Cezanne was painting just for me, and I cried. And this happened again under very different circumstances with a very different type of art. I was a little more experienced in the art world, and a new, now defunct, contemporary art museum in my hometown asked me to curate an exhibition. The first piece I knew I had to include was a video piece by a Danish artist named Jesper Just. It was titled Bliss Heaven. I had recently seen his work at Art Basel in Miami on a small viewing screen, but even in this tiny format, it resonated with me. And I just knew if I could move that piece off of the small TV set and display it in an interesting context on the big screen, it would really resonate with our audience. And by doing this, it certainly resonated with me in a way I couldn't have imagined. One of the central characters in the video is a semi-trailer. So I rented a trailer and parked it in front of the museum for 2 months. Built some stairs, added the largest projector I could, and found the best surround system I could afford. And transformed this trailer into a screening room, specifically for this short film. I just rewatched this 8-minute video for the first time in years, and even on my small computer screen, the last 2 minutes still made me feel like I could accomplish anything. That no matter how outlandish our dreams may seem to those around us, everything was possible. I didn't grow up around art, and in my teens, I'm sure I couldn't have even told you what a curator was. So this exhibition, and specifically this video by Jesper, represented for me this transition from a lost teenager to fulfilling a dream I never realized I had. For copyright reasons, I'm only showing you clips of this video right now, but there's a foundation in Berlin that features this video on their website, so I'll be sure to link that in the description below if you want to take a look. And the artist currently has an exhibition open in New York at Periton Gallery, so if you find yourself in Manhattan the next few weeks, be sure to check it out. The third piece that brought me to tears in the middle of a museum was actually a piece I had seen a few times before. And that's the thing about art, right? As we grow older, we bring new sets of knowledge and experiences with us everywhere we go. So if we see a piece of art at 25 years old, that same piece could mean something very different at 35 or 45 years old. And that's exactly what happened to me at the Art Institute of Chicago. The work is by Felix Gonzalez Torres, and it's called Untitled, Portrait of Ross in L.A. from 1991. About a year ago, I took more of a deep dive into this piece, and I'll be sure to link that at the end. But essentially, the work is just what you're seeing here. It's a pile of candy on the floor, and you, the viewer, are invited to take a piece. It's about loss and losing a loved one. Throughout the day, the pile gets smaller and smaller. I think the first time I saw this piece, my reaction was, neat, candy. But as the years went by, as I learned more about the artist, as we collectively were trying to get through a global pandemic, the gravity of this piece really hit me, and it now ranks among my favorite pieces of art. So do I believe in the conspiracy theory that people are making up these stories to force us to have these emotional reactions? No, because I've experienced it myself. And that's just what great art does. Art is the ultimate expression of what it means to be human. When you figured out how to feed yourself, clothe yourself, how to build shelter, when nomadic tribes come together to create societies, and all of a sudden you find yourself with this thing called leisure time, you create art. And that's what separates us from the rest of the animals on the planet. So I'm begging you, turn off YouTube for a minute. Go to a museum, stand in front of a Cezanne. The reward will far exceed your expectations. Thank you for joining me on this rather emotional trip down memory lane. You can find that link to that video I did on Felix Gonzalez Torres' pile of candy right here. If you found this video at least slightly worth watching, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to this channel. To everyone still watching, you guys are absolute rock stars, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Ciao!